Alright, I'm going to replace this TCM transmission control module on my 14 Mustang V6. It's got the 6R80 trans, so it's going to be the same if you have the GT because it's the same transmission. Also same transmission that's in the F150s and several other vehicles. And I believe that's what my problem is. Like I said, if you want to know more about that analogy, watch the video. You can go to my channel, click on playlists, and there's a Mustang playlist where you can see all the videos to the playlist. I go in a little more detail there, but I'm going to get to this thing. So we're going to replace the TCM today, and that's what this video is. Before you start, disconnect your battery. Whenever working on anything electrical, it's a good idea to disconnect the battery. Also, any changes you're making, even if it's just a fluid change, by resetting the battery, it resets the computer. So you want your computer to relearn the new conditions since you're replacing fluid, filter, valve body, TCM, anything like that. So we're going to disconnect the battery and then just make sure you reconnect it before you finish and start it up. Alright, so I'm under the front of the car. Here's your transmission pan. I'm going to start breaking these bolts loose. So I'm going to start at the back and work my way forward, and then it'll slowly start leaking out the back. Alright, so I got all the tranny fluid out. It completely filled that up to the rim, so I had to scoop some out into another container. So now gotta work on getting these bolts out all the way and drop this pan. Alright, so when you take these bolts out, there's still gonna be some fluid in here. You see it dripping there. And don't come from one side all the way to the next, because if you leave it hanging from bolt clear on this, the whole pan's going to tip and you're going to bend the lip of your pan. So remove them all except for the center ones last, and then even once you pull this out, I got another one on the other side. Don't let this thing hang down off of that one bolt. Support it, keep it pushed up while you get these last two out. That way it's not dangling from one bolt and bending your lip, or it won't seal right. Careful when you bring this down. This filter fell out on me, about hit me in the damn face, so be cautious of that. They might stay up there or they might fall out. I think I bumped it with the pan as I came down, which is why it popped out. But so normally your filter would just be hanging there. So there's all your valve bodies, and right there's the solenoids. So for me, since I'm replacing the TCM, oh, shit, you can see part of it there. I gotta drop this valve body and solenoids to get that out. And I believe there's 8 bolts. You see a million bolts here, but the littler ones, they hold the valve body together. If you take the little ones out, that would be how you split it. But there's 8, I believe, big ones right here. Maybe you can see the difference. This is smaller. It's like a 25 or a 26 Torx bit, and it's got rounded edges. And then this one has more flat edges, and it's a T30 Torx bit. There should be 8 of those, I believe, and those are what you need to take out so that you can get this down. Do not take out the smaller ones. That'll split the valve body in half. Now I gotta watch this piece. When I drop it, it may fall out with it. It's plastic and brittle. Make sure I don't bust it up. I gotta watch this shift link as I drop it. Make sure I don't get caught on it, and also on reinstall it and make sure it goes back in exactly the way it is. You got your shift link here, and then your gear selector sensor, or whatever it's called there, and the other side. Somewhere up in here above this, there's a thermal valve body, something or other, that's going to fall down with it. We need to make sure that we don't let it drop and damage itself, or it can cause issues. So don't let it like fall and smash into the ground. I'm going to try to watch out for it when it comes down. I'm going to have to move my fluid here in a sec. And then on the back side of this, I'll show it in a minute when I can get back there, is your main harness where it plugs in. And you're gonna have to pull this down, I think, somehow. I might have to unlock it first. Well, maybe it's that. There we go. pops down like that. You got to push in this tab. See, it'll come down about that much, and that kind of, it locks into this freaking thing up here. I'll show you in a second. If I can get this thing to focus, I'll do my best. Come on, focus. To show you this, there we go. So there's the plug that goes in the back side. You got to flip this lever up like so. So it'll unlock. Okay. And then you're unplugged, but I believe this also is holding it in there. Putting this on here helped a little bit like this. Give me a little leverage to kind of wiggle it as I'm doing. I'm going to work on wiggling, getting that out. I mean, it's plastic. You can't really latch onto it with anything without screwing it up. So, focus. Jesus. Alright, so I finally got it out. I had to stick a long flathead screwdriver up in there, and I just carefully pried on the lip of this thing in a few different places until it popped out. I would say pay attention to how it's in there. Maybe even mark it. That way you get the orientation correct to get it back in there. It looks like it kind of like threads / pops in there. I don't know. Alright, so where am I at here? You got 5 on this side towards the front of the car. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know why this one's shaped different, but that is the correct one to take out. Again, these are the T30 Torx bit. So you got 4 in a row, 5, and then you got 3 over here, 1, 2, 3. So these are all loose, and you want to be careful. As I started breaking these loose, more fluid was coming out, a few more ounces right into my face. Yeah, I forgot there's these 3 bolts. They're also Torx 30-bit on your lead frame here, TCM. That's what's still holding me back. I gotta get those 3 out, and then this thing should drop out. Alright, so now that I got this down, this does hold it in there. You got to pull that out. And there's a freaking notch right there. See that tab? And there's a notch right here. My fingernail's on it. Basically, that just lines up like that. And then it squeezes in. So that part locks that in like that. You got to take this out. So basically, to get it out, you're just going to wiggle it and pop it back like that, and then reinstall. You just line up the notch with the notch here. So there's no twisting or anything required, no threads. It just locks in with that notch. So there's all the bolts I took out. All of them for me were the same size, except for those back 3 that I pointed out are the short ones. But some years might have different lengths of bolts, so you want to pay attention to that and put them back in the right spot. Right here is that thermal expansion valve that you don't want to drop and smash. That little nozzle there is what can get damaged, and then also the cylinder, if it gets nicked, you might not be able to get it up in where it goes. So that's what you don't want to let drop. That's where that goes, the thermal expansion valve. Your filter plugs up in there, and then this thing you want to take down and check. It'll just kind of pop off. That's that plastic piece I was mentioning. Check and make sure there's no cracks in it, and also that it doesn't fall down like this does. To get that back up in there is going to be a little tricky. And these things I'm curious about, because I thought they were supposed to be 4. They're long rubber tubes about like that. And see, they're color coded. That one's blue, that one's green, that one's black, it looks like. I was thinking there should be a 4th one. I look up in there, and it seems like it's just a void. So I don't know if on the Mustang or my year or whatever that it doesn't have one there. But right there's where they set, and you can see that voided hole there has that black ring. So I don't know, you got to make sure those don't fall down when you pull this down, because you want to stick them back up in there before you slide this back up in. So I'm going to pull this out where I can see better and see if any of those rubber tubes is laying down on this, but I don't see one. So alright, so there's a better look at everything. Ow, damn it. top side of the valve body. There's that thing. There's your magnet. Now watching this, I would definitely recommend keeping this thing away from that magnet. It could mess up the sensors. Obviously you want to keep this very clean. So then there's a few bolts that hold this thing on there. Okay. And there might be one in there, I'm not sure. Come to the other underside of the valve body to pull those bolts out to release the TCM, and then you got a couple guide pins you got to slide it off of. There's another bolt. There's another bolt. I'm gonna get this shit more organized and take a look. Like I said, that's where those rubber tubes sat. I just wiped away that black there that was there. Considering that one doesn't have a hole and these three do, I do not think there's supposed to be one there. I think certain years or vehicles, they might have 4. So make sure you check. Make sure you got them all. Look around. Make sure it doesn't fall down. If one of them falls, stick it back up in there before you put this assembly back up in there. But it looks like I only got 3. So those are all the bolts. And again, for me, they were all the same size. But they may not be depending on what you're working on. 6 in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, there's these guide pins. It stuck a little at first. It's going to stick on these guide pins, and you kind of just got to work with it back and forth on different parts until you get it. And of course, it's plugged into the solenoids down there. Come on. It's like right there. Oh, my guide pin came out with it. I got to stick that back in. There we go. So yeah, it plugs into these solenoids here. Alright, so I lied. Those guide pins, they stay in the part. I just looked at the new one and it has the guide pins in it. So you're actually working the guide pins out of the the valve body. Fuck. So I don't really understand this concept that these electrical connections here are submersed in fluid. You know, you would think you'd want that to be dry, but I guess that doesn't mess with it. But I'm a little conflicted because I seen another set that comes with a little gasket that goes over these, but it was just foam, so maybe it was just to cushion it a little. But it probably doesn't matter, but I'm gonna try to clean that up a little. All right, so that's how this thing works. See the teeth? You press that tab, pull it out that far, then you can see the teeth there. That's actually all the further you need to go, because those teeth line up with these notches. And then of course you got that notch there. That's pretty much how it works. Then once that's in all the way, then that'll lock it, because those tangs will go over it like that and lock it into place. So you only do have to pull it down that much to pop that thing out. Alright, so there's the new one. You just start with the guide pins, and that'll pretty much keep it to where it goes on perfectly straight, so it'll line up with these solenoids, right? And then you got to kind of squeeze and pop it down onto those solenoids and just kind of work your way back and forth like how we had to do to take it off. Don't forget your bolts. So you get all those bolts torqued down. It's 8 Newton meters, which is 71 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds. It's not really a torque sequence for that or anything. I lied. Here's the torque sequence. Just make sure it's all the way down before you start your bolt. Torque them down. Okay, so that thing just goes up in there like that. Make sure the spring's on it, so the brass end hangs down, spring goes up. It keeps wanting to slide out on you, but if you push it up in there all the way and try turning it this way or that way a few degrees. For me, it stayed in there. Obviously, if you bump it, it's going to fall out, so it's just barely hanging there. If you have trouble with it, you can put the appropriate engine building grease on it to just make it a little thicker up in there so it'll stay in place. But I didn't have to do that. And alright, so the way I line this up, it's real easy to start with the back, because you know that plug goes out that hole and your plug comes in. So I just angled it this way first, got that up in there pretty much to where it was supposed to be, and then I carefully tipped the front face of it upwards, to make sure I didn't bump that thermal expansion valve so it wouldn't drop. And you can kind of like wiggle it, and you can judge it by this piece right here, because remember this lines up like that. So I started that in, carefully positioned it this way, and then while holding it in place, I started one of these back bolts here, and then I put one of these front ones in, and then you can release it. So now I'm going to work on getting all the bolts back in, and we're going to get it torqued down. Just to share a little tip so you don't cross thread these, I always like to turn my bolts backwards first, and I can feel and often hear them engage the threads. So if you go backwards first, listen real carefully. Hear that? If you put enough pressure on it, right when it meets the edge of the threads where they meet, you'll hear that click sound, and then from there you know you're lined up and you can go forward. Also, you need to make sure you have this shift selector thing here in the right position so that the pin on it lines up with the shift rod, and then your shift rod here, whatever, I don't know what to call them. Make sure these line up when they go in. So you need to slide this black piece down here in the correct orientation when you're putting this valve body back up in there. So everything's lined up. We made sure our thermal expansion valve was up in there, didn't fall out. We made sure we didn't bump it and cause it to fall out as we were installing the valve body. We made sure, oh, where the hell is it? That plastic thing is lined up and all that. We made sure we didn't break off our dipstick. So, made sure this is lined up. So now we need to torque down these bolts. So it's going to be the 8 on the valve body and then also the 3 back here, okay? Now, I found 2 different torque specs. They were both pretty much the same torque sequence, except for 6 and 7 were backwards. But one of them only said 53 inch-pounds, I believe it was. And the other one is actually from a 6R80 transmission repair manual. And it says 71 inch-pounds. Again, that's inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. 71 inch-pounds of torque. So that's the one I'm going to go with, because it's actually from a 680R repair manual. And also, only 53 inch-pounds seems pretty damn light. I mean, that's like 4 foot-pounds of torque or something like that. 4 or 5. So we're going to go with the 71 inch-pounds. Here's the torque sequence. Pause the video if you need to study it. So that's what we're going to do. Also pay attention, the orientation I believe was this way on the diagram with the solenoids over here so that you get the sequence correct. You don't want to look at it from the wrong side of the car. Alright, I got mine all torqued down. It's not a bad idea to go over the pattern again the second time and double check the torque and make sure none of them worked loose while you're going through the pattern, which I did and all mine were fine. So now I'm going to work on getting this plugged back in so we know how this connection here pops back in. You gotta line it up and then shove it in all the way, and then once you're sure it's shoved in all the way, then you're gonna have to whap that over it. It's just tight no matter what. You literally just gotta like kind of give it a good whap without breaking it. Plug her back in, lock the clamp down, and then we're gonna have to get the filter back up in here and get the cover torqued back down and get it filled up with fluid. We need to go around the mating surface for the gasket here and wipe all this transmission fluid and junk off so it has a nice dry surface to mate to. And then we're going to do the same to the gasket itself. If we're not using a new one, you can reuse that one or replace it. If it's in good shape and the rubber still feels soft, you can reuse it. I've watched other people do the same. Fucking bug on me. Biting my fucking arm. Anyways, you can reuse the gasket if it's in decent shape, or just buy a new one. So we need to clean the mating surface off here. If you're reusing the gasket, clean it up and clean the mating surface of the pan up. Alright, so I got my pan all cleaned up. Got the magnet cleaned up. This collects any metal particles and metal dust created by the gears wearing and such. Put that back. So now the pan's ready for install. Oh yeah, I still gotta clean my gasket. So my local parts store, they don't have the filter and gasket in stock. I was going to replace it, but I'm trying to get this car back on the road today. So I'm gonna go ahead and reuse the gasket. Like I said, there shouldn't be any issues if it's in good shape, and I can feel my rubber still feels like rubber instead of plastic. So, and even the service manual I was looking into for the torque specs on everything, it said you can reuse the filter as long as it's in decent shape. And I can even see my filter material down in there and touch it, and there's not really any gunk and shit on it, so should be good to go. I'm gonna clean that up a little better too. But so I was going to replace it, but you can reuse the filter if it's not in bad shape, and you can reuse the gasket if it's not in bad shape also, or replace. I was going to lean towards replacing it, but since they don't have it in stock, I'm just going to go ahead and throw them back in there. So if there's any issues with that, which there shouldn't be, I'll report back, but it should be fine. Of course, part of the filter being in good shape is your little rubber gasket here, so make sure you inspect that. But now it's starting to rain on me, so I got to get this out of the damn rain, because you cannot get water in the transmission fluid. Goes like that. You just stick her up in that hole there. And that's just pretty much it, and it just kind of hangs there. So then you got to bring the pan up, and it's going to push it up with the pan. Try to wiggle that in, make sure it's in all the way, and it literally just kind of hangs there from the rubber gasket. So you just hand start a bolt towards the front here. These pipes are in the way, so it's easier to do one on the front side. And then one somewhere in the back. That'll hold it in place for you so you can get the rest of these bolts in. So I'm going to get the rest of these in, get them finger tight, and then go over the torque sequence. Alright, torque spec, torque sequence. So there's not really a sequence other than this, other than it says crisscross pattern. It doesn't go bolt 1, then 2, then 7, then, you know, like the valve body did. So crisscross pattern, so like start it, you know, just kind of zigzag all over the place, crisscross pattern, back and forth. Don't go da 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 da, like offset it, crisscross it all the way down. Best to start from the middle, work your way out, but crisscross it as you go to the best of your ability. It is 11 Newton meters or 97 inch-pounds of torque, not foot-pounds. Once again, inch-pounds. Did you get that, Ultra 2K? Good idea to go over it 2 and 3 times. Not over torquing, just rechecking the torque after you've done your little makeshift crisscross pattern to make sure none of the bolts have come loose. And then that's the pan. Alright, so your little fill plug and dipstick here. Dipstick separates. So this is your fill plug. This is a 3/4 inch. It's located right there where you can see my pipe going in. Front passenger side of the transmission. You're either going to have to make some contraption like this. You run it down in through there into the fill hole. So either make some contraption with what you got, or get some hose or something and attach to a funnel, or you're going to have to buy the appropriate thing with like a super skinny 4-foot long funnel, or even that, I don't know, because like the angle that's at, it's way more easy having pipe, because I don't even know if you had that thing. Maybe you could get it if you had a super skinny 4-foot long funnel that went straight down, maybe not. But this is what I came up with just crap I had laying around. So you don't lose all your transmission fluid doing this, because there's still some up in like where the gear sets are and everything. If this thing was completely dry, like a brand new transmission when they got to fill it up, or if they do a flush, which means they're blowing out everything else that's in there, it's 13 quarts. Okay. I watched somebody else do this. It didn't seem like they lost a whole lot of fluid, like a few quarts. But me, I lost like 2 gallons, which is 8 quarts. So I got 9 just to be sure. Your dipstick here. This bottom cross-hatched area, and again, it might be different for different years. This is 2014 Mustang again. This is your cold range, because transmission fluid expands as it gets hot. So on flat level ground, we need it in this cross-hatched A area, cold. The bottom of that hatched area would be low. The top half of that is where you're going to want to try to get it, where it's full. If the transmission's hot, then you're going to use the B. But they might not all have dipsticks like this. So refer to your owner's manual as far as checking it goes. But actually, I don't know if it'll show that because mine didn't, because they're jerks and they don't want you to do it yourself. But that's how mine works. If you have a different stick, then you're just going to have to go on some forums or something and look it up. But hopefully they have two areas like that. I got a cold and a hot, but I've seen some where it only has a hot level. In that instance, you got to go drive the car down the road and back for a few minutes, get it full operating temperature, come, put it in park, row it through all the gears, each individually, back in the park, then you'll pull it out and check it, and you'll want it in the crosshatch area. If it only has one, that's how you do a hot check. So, Ford Mercon LV. For the Mustang, it says to put this in it, but check your manual to be sure. This is supposed to be really good fluid. So generally, I don't buy like name brand stuff. Like if I drive a Ford, I don't put Ford in it. If I drive Nissan, I don't put Nissan in it. You know, I just use whatever. But in this case, with this being a performance car, having a performance transmission, from my research, you really want to put this stuff in it. So it's expensive. It was $8 a quart. If you could find it online, I didn't have time. I had to run in town and grab this today, so I had to pay $8 a quart. You might be able to find it in bulk online for cheaper, like if you can get the gallon jugs. They're usually cheaper than buying 4 quarts individually, but yeah, expensive stuff. I got 9 just in case because I lost 8. I want to have extra on hand. I'd rather have too much than not enough. Of course, I'm not going to fill it too much. I just would rather have extra on hand because I don't want this to be low. Alright, so that was a lot of talking, so I'm going to shut the hell up now and get this thing filled up with fluid before this storm finishes moving in and screws me. Alright, so I only got 5.9 quarts in it. It started overflowing on me. It was puking out of the hole, so it's full. Which is weird, because over here, I got almost 2 gallons. I'll say that's a gallon, and I spilled some trying to transfer it. You can see it on the ground there. Also, I didn't catch all of it in the pan when I drained the transmission because it was just going everywhere. So I figured, you know, I probably lost this much to the ground, but I guess not. I did lose some, but not quite 2 whole gallons because, yeah, I don't know. Also, the filter's going to suck up some, and all the valve bodies had fluid in them. You know, the channels in the valve body, and they were dry, so there's probably air pockets in them and such. So I'm going to put the plug back in, and probably after running the car, it's going to, you know, the level's going to drop some because it's going to suck it into all those areas where it's missing currently. There's probably air bubbles and such trapped in it until it gets running. So even though it's like completely full with a little less than 6, even though that sitting over there is more than 6, that's probably why. So I'm going to reconnect my battery, going to run it down the road and back, which is going to get it hot, and then I guess I'm going to have to check for a hot temp, because I'm assuming that it's going to draw some of that fluid and bring the level down, because right now it's like really full. Alright, so I'm actually going to let it run for like 10-15 minutes before I take it down the road. That way that gasket has time to seat and mate to that surface a little bit. I'm also not going to be hard on it for a few hot and cold cycles so that that gasket will seat fully. You don't just want to get in and just start raping on it. You need that gasket to set completely. Okay, yeah, see, I knew that didn't make sense. That itty bitty drop. I had to put this glove on because it is hot as shit. It's right next to the catalytic converter and the frickin' O2 sensor right there, and you'll burn the shit out of your hands. But yeah, look at that. So we need it clear up there in B now because it's hot, and it's way down there. So yeah, it remember we only got like 5.9 quarts in it and started puking it out. Okay, it lost way more than that, and I was correct. So it was just the transmission, when you run it and go through the gears and such, it sucks it up. So I'm not 100% sure. You might have been able, just by racking it through the gears in the driveway, got it to pull some up. You may or may not have got it to do it that way. But see, I was wondering about that. Because yeah, now you can see it's definitely low. There's no leaks. I was just under there, checked for leaks, and everything's dry. So yeah, the transmission, it sucks some of that stuff up in there. And it goes further up in. So that is why I couldn't get all my fluid in there. So now confirming that, I would only like just drive it down the road and back, park, and then get as much as you can in there, drive it down the road and back. I mean like a mile or less, park it again, fill it back up. Because yeah, we are definitely low. Like I said, I might not have quite lost an entire 2 gallons, but probably pretty close. So I need at least 7 quarts in her. But just seeing how low that is, this probably is going to take the 8 to get it up there. So, well, I'm going to put, I don't know, 7.5, 8 in there. And then go for a drive again, get back under it again, and check it again. Of course, this is supposed to be on level ground too. So by tipping this side up to check it, it would be a little higher than that if it was dropped down in level. It's still low without a lift, you know, like a hydraulic lift. I can't get under it. I have no choice. Unless you want to jack up all 4 corners and put blocks under all 4 corners, but I'm not going through that. So just remember that what it's reading right now is actually a little fuller if the car was level, because it's the fluid is pivoted off to the other side just a little bit. All right, I went with 7.5 because there's no telling if I lost a complete, you know, 8 quarts. I'm not sure if I spilled enough to fill up that jug there, so it's going to be a lot easier just to top it off and add a little more if I have to than it is going to be to try and suck some of that shit out of there. So I went with 7.5 to be safe, because I'm not sure if I got 8 out. So I'll go run it again and then pull in and check it again. And then if it's just a little low, then that's fine, because I got this side of the car jacked up. But if you're able to check it on flat level surface, then you know where it should be. I'm having trouble getting this thing to focus, but I don't know why it won't focus. I keep tapping it to focus and it's not focusing. Anyways, that's where our level is. So then there's the crosshatch for the cold and the crosshatch for the hot. So we're still pretty low, but it's also due in part to how high I have this side of the car jacked up. So I'm going to go ahead and put that other half a quart in there, because I think if it was on level ground, then the fluid would be about where it needs to be after I put that final 1/8 quart in there. And I don't think I lost more than 8 quarts. I really don't. So it worked out just like I thought it would, honestly. 8 quarts, and it's good to go. It's still going to show low by the method I'm checking it, because this side of the car is jacked up. But so taking that into account, 8 quarts seems about right, especially considering that I estimated that I lost about 8 quarts. So hopefully this video helped you out. If it did, please hit the like button. Make sure you check out the Mustang playlist if you want to see all the videos on this car. And we're still modifying it. Currently has cold air intake and SCT tune. I'm doing MPT tunes next. Aluminum drive shaft, 373 gears, and hopefully next year supercharged. So make sure you subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, click all if you want to get notifications if you want to watch the build on this car. So hey, thanks for watching. Catch you next time.